Got a couple emails here, rad@radradio.com. First one is from Franco.
Hey, Franco.
So we announced yesterday and posted on social media that Eddie from NorCal Gun Vault would join us in studio. He's here. Good morning, sir.
Everybody.
Yay, Eddie.
Right away, we got this note from Franco. Says, about Eddie from NorCal Gun Vault. Just yesterday, I purchased my first firearm after leaving the Marine Corps, and I must say it was a great experience with awesome customer service. I'm truly grateful for you guys and the awesome partners you have.
Heck yeah. Thank you for your service.
Keith posted on social media, my wife just bought a Sig Sauer 238 from NorCal Gun Vault. We live in Yuba City, so I called down there, and they held it until we got there. While in line, I heard a familiar voice, and there was Eddie. It was super busy in there, so I chose to leave him to his work, but I did geek out for a minute.
Aww.
Awesome service, and I love the way they have the computer set up for the paperwork. Great experience. The next purchase is mine.
Fantastic.
Love hearing that right away.
Yes,
So
sir.
we originally, I asked you to come on so that we could talk a little bit about this Russia-Ukraine thing, which we'll get to, but I couldn't ignore the fact that for all the wrong reasons, our region made national news yesterday at the Church of Sacramento, which is a non-denominational church with about 200 members in the Arden area. A father shot and killed his 3 children, killed the woman who was there to supervise the visit between him and his children, killed himself. As of a few minutes ago, he hasn't yet publicly been identified. He was 39 years old. The 3 children were all girls. They were 9, 10, and 13 years old. Sacramento County Sheriff and friend of the show, Scott Jones, said that the mother had a restraining order against the father, and obviously people with restraining orders against them are not legally allowed to have a firearm. The mother of the children is alive and was obviously dealing with this gut-wrenching news. So, Eddie, immediately, this turns into, for half of the country, a gun control issue. Sure. There's already a law. He's not supposed to have the gun. I've never quite understood lurching towards the gun control angle, the gun violence angle. This isn't a gun violence angle. This is a human violence story using a gun.
Sure.
How do you react to the, oh, here we go again, this is more gun violence, we need more restrictions on legal gun owners?
Right. I mean, the restrictions are already there. I mean, the TRO itself, the temporary restraining order itself, requires that they surrender their firearms, ammunition, magazines. Even the DOJ now has a new process in their system where we have to report that. Used to be done manually on a form, and you would fax it in, and now it's actually done electronically. It's horrible. I mean, the senseless. I can't even process it yet that somebody would be that destitute and hopeless to take all of that with them.
I mean, you go through the layers, right? So you got the layers of wantonly and with malice killing another human,
right?
Wantonly and with malice killing children. And then you get to killing your own, that you're so filled with rage over whatever's going on, obviously, in their relationship or whatever. We don't know yet the status of the gun he was using, whether it was his gun that he never turned in or whether it was an illegal gun that he got from the street. What are we supposed to do to stop that?
Right, nothing. I mean, that's a human condition issue. That's not a gun issue. I mean, it was a tool that was used in a horrific way, and again, we can address that in trying to look at mental health, look more into dealing with the temporary restraining orders and the effects of it. And I mean, it's really, we've taken a few guns, and we've done a lot during the pandemic, and it's a hard experience for everybody, but it should just the senselessness of it just boggles me.
I absolutely agree, Eddie. I think that the conversation that gets brought up about gun control every time somebody who's mentally ill has something like this happen, it completely undercuts the entire movement of trying to make people more aware of mental illness. It's saying that just because someone had a firearm in their hand, then that induced psychosis, which is insane. And also, people who are hell-bent enough manage to kill others and themselves with things that are not actually even technically weapons. So it's not, I think intention has more to do with it, and I think that it ignores the bigger problem when the issue is, the instrument is the problem. When someone commits a murder with a candlestick holder, we don't go on a crusade of control candlestick holders.
Right.
Well, the other thing we just won't cede to, and I don't understand it because we've proven time and time again, there are just bad people, period. And there's no law you're going to put in place that's going to stop a bad person. It never made sense to me, all these laws for guns, because you literally think of criminals. You're putting these laws in place thinking a criminal's going to follow them. They're criminals. They already don't follow the law, but they're all of a sudden going to follow a gun law. It makes no sense. There is obviously the conversation for some people are mentally ill, and and then the other thing is there's just bad people there, and bad things, as Rob has always said, and bad things will happen, which is awful and horrible. But making a new law for law-abiding citizens of guns doesn't solve the issue of a man like that.
I can't get past that part of it. The level to which this guy had snapped. When you're killing your own 3 children, the idea that we're going to focus on how he killed them is missing the point, to say the least.
Yep.
The reason we did want to have you on is you have extensive military service. We've had you on before to talk about world affairs. We've got the Russia-Ukraine thing going on. Let's start with just your overall view of what you've seen in the last 6 days and what you're thinking as a guy who's served, what, 20 years? And thank you so much again. Well, what's your initial opinion about what we're seeing here?
Well, and the information that we're getting, you have to be careful about what you're reading. You got to really read between the lines. The background that I have kind of teaches me a little bit about, the art of disinformation and things that can come about. So, initially there was this whole Snake Island thing where they killed everybody on Snake Island. Well, I read something a couple days ago saying that wasn't true, that they were actually all taken prisoner, and today it's coming out in a larger format that they didn't kill everybody on there. The fact that he's going into Ukraine, it doesn't surprise me with Putin that he would do something like this. He's former KGB, former Soviet Union. He's watched his country deteriorate from what it once was as this big powerhouse to what it is now, and where it was struggling and trying. I mean, it wasn't struggling, but it's run by a bunch of oligarchs, and so Ukraine. There's money in Ukraine. There's resources in Ukraine, and
biggest supplier of wheat in the world, I believe, for starters.
Right, and right now I think there's money in that because there are places that are needing that. China, for example, is going through kind of a shortage of wheat and whatnot. I think the bigger picture is NATO. Ukraine has been flirting with joining NATO for probably the last 10 years. You've heard a lot of back and forth where we're going to put missiles there, not put missiles there, etc. And I think just in the Russian psyche, but I don't mean general people, but just the leadership, is there's always this paranoia. And it's been that way since Stalin. I mean, I don't know about before that, but Stalin had a lot of paranoia. And so I think it kind of creates this pressure. But I think it's also a crime of opportunity. I think we have a world climate right now where he thinks that he can do it, get away with it, and just claim it, like he did Crimea back in. I mean, this isn't the invasion of Ukraine. This is the next step. The first step was when they took the Crimean Peninsula, and that was allowed to happen back in 2014.
So that was 7 years ago. There's a lot of people like Senator Marco Rubio, Condoleezza Rice, former Secretary of State. I saw one of Obama's former national security advisors as well. They're all singing the same tune, which is this is a different Putin. Yeah. That he's lost it to a level that was not there 5 or so years ago. But you're right, 7 years ago he took Crimea and nobody said boo. Do you dismiss those that say, I mean, the guy's almost 70. His legacy has always been he wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union. Sure. How nuts do you think he is?
I and again, look at the people around him. How nuts are they? And how I mean, right now I know that Crimea was there to take and get a Black Sea port, because really he was kind of relegated to the Northern Pacific Ocean and the Arctic. And so now he has a Black Sea port, which is a Mediterranean port. It kind of gives him back in the ball game for that. I think my thinking is he's pushing back towards the Baltic Sea. I think Estonia, Lithuania, they're all in the crosshairs next, because that gives him a Baltic Sea port, and that gets them back to their former kind of sea power. Because the only port they had in the Mediterranean prior to the Crimea was in Syria. So it's getting back militarily their access to that.
So you're viewing this entirely from a strategic standpoint, as opposed to what a lot of the reporting or what a lot of the talking is that this is more about his legacy and how far he'll go and how much he's willing to kill. Can we combine the two? I mean, what Sure. if he takes Ukraine, which we'll get to the Ukrainians in a minute or so. And he continues into Lithuania, Estonia, and all those other things. And then the question becomes, does he go near Poland? Does he go near NATO countries?
Right.
That's where Article 5 is supposed to kick in. An attack on one is attack on all.
Right.
That's World War III, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unless we don't respond, unless all of NATO doesn't respond.
Right.
Which I don't know if he's calculating that we're all that weak. Or,
Well, I mean, he's talking about having his finger on the button. I mean, he's talked about, readying his nuclear forces. So I think that that's in response to the fact that we're sending so much arms into the Ukraine. Now, here that brings up another point. The Ukrainians are having to be issued firearms. We wouldn't have that problem here.
No, we wouldn't.
No, I mean, they're having to hand those out. I mean, I just, so.
we have what, 300 million we know of in this country?
Right.
No, I've read something saying that the reason in World War II that Japan never invaded our soils because everybody in the United States had a gun, or most households did.
Right.
I saw a map someone put up. I don't know if it was on Insta or I don't know, wherever it was, but it was the map of the United States of what would happen if they came to us as far as guns go. And even, I think it was Alaska, they wrote in, even the liberals have guns, which of course they do, right? Liberals own guns, but they're every single place they're like guns. Sure. Every region, right? It was guns. Yeah. So,
Well, and the problem with, while that's funny for
right.
us, and we're in
Yeah.
the privileged state to do that.
we are.
If we get in World War III, it ain't going to be about us having guns.
No, it's not. And it's going to happen again like World War II did. It's going to be off in a distant area unless they start launching stuff over here, because we're all reachable now by a lot of bad actors. And so the amount of damage they could wreak with just one or two nukes at a high altitude burst would just be devastating. And not about how many people it would kill, but about that it would kill our infrastructure, our electronics and electrical infrastructure. And it wouldn't take long to put us into a real hurt. Most of our military comms and our military hardware is hardened from that, but not our general stuff. I mean, you wouldn't have. It would be devastating.
But is it even remotely conceivable to you that something like that would happen, and we and France and Britain, or any one of those three, wouldn't respond and create, Reagan's old mutually assured destruction?
Right.
The guy that fires first loses his country as much as the damage he does to the other.
Sure, it's still there. And I mean, I think the NATO countries having the armament that we do gives us more of a hand in that. It just takes one bad actor, though, and one launch.
And none of this is predictable, but as you watch this, I think we're on day 7. What's your feeling about where this is headed? Do you have any, or do you go in each direction every day multiple times?
No, I think I look at it as, I think that Putin thought this was going to be, a blitzkrieg. I think thought he was going to go in, take this, it'd be done in 5 days. I'm pretty sure he was assured by his generals that this would all be over quickly. But the longer it goes on, the worse the optics get, and the worse it gets for him. So he's either going to get more desperate, or he's going to back down. But I don't know that he backs down.
So 51-49, he doesn't back down, which means what? He keeps going, and he just keeps going until he has a reason not to.
Right, or he gets another actor like Belarus or somebody to play the game as well, which they're already talking about.
I feel like he has that little man syndrome. Like, that's what scares me about him, is that he seems like, well, fine, then we'll all go down together.
Yeah.
If I can't have what I want, I'm fine with the whole world dying. It's just kind of how I read him. I hope I'm wrong, obviously, but he just seems that way. And I'm actually I'm so unimpressed with his army. I mean, at first I was like, oh, well, that's a lot, as Rob's reading off the numbers of how big they are, this, that. I'm like, no, they're not highly trained at all.
Well,
and the
I wonder,
Ukrainians are kicking their ass.
They're conscripted.
And I wonder how much that is true versus how amazing the Ukrainian people are.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, Russia has
yeah.
not unleashed the full might of its military, including its army. They've still got that convoy and
Well,
everything.
their air power. They really have not unleashed their air power yet, which I'm kind of surprised. If you're looking at taking over a country, you maintain air superiority, and we're not seeing the full might of the Air Force. All we're seeing are transport planes and escorts. So I'm not really, it kind of makes me wonder, what's the end game here? So
Do you think they're trying to destroy as little as possible because they want the resources?
that's possible, but I mean, the cities are just, and they're probably trying to prevent killing too many civilians. I don't think he wants that on his hands, because if you go in and do that, then who's left. So I think it was supposed to happen fast. I think the Ukrainian government was expected to back down, and they haven't. So.
And Zelensky, former stand-up comedian and TV host, now President Zelensky, has been, I mean, the onions on this guy.
I love it.
Right?
God, I don't need ammunition. What did he say? Like, I don't need a ride. I need ammunition.
Right,
He was offered a ride. I'm like,
they're telling him,
God
"Get
dang
out,
it.
can
There's a
escape." And he's
leader.
like, nope.
We got an email from Raymond, says, maybe Eddie from NorCal Gunvault can answer this. Do you think that Zelensky is doing enough to keep this Ukrainian resistance strong even after he dies? I think it's all but certain that Russia won't let Zelensky stay in power, especially now with the reports of hired mercenaries, which usually consist of ex-special forces brought in to assassinate him. Yeah, this is a 400-strong person group. They moved out of Africa to come after him. What's the possibility of the whole country turning into a civil war chaos after he's gone?
I mean, I think if they martyr him, it'll be as strong. It just depends on who steps up behind him. Do we have a Lyndon Johnson stepping in, or do we have a Harry Truman stepping in, or do we have the opposite?
And the report, and again, as you pointed out at the beginning, we have to take everything we see, everything that gets reported to us with a grain of salt, because we're getting a little snapshot. But the snapshot over the last day or two has been at the Poland border, where more Ukrainians are coming back than are leaving the country, or more former Ukrainians are coming from, they had displaced to Europe, and they're crossing the border into Ukraine solely to fight.
Wow, amazing.
Which, again, who knows if those numbers are consistent when they say there's more going this way or that way, but the Ukrainians have shown something to the world.
Well, they're defending their homeland. No different than the Russians invading Afghanistan. They were able to take over the government, but they never took the country, just the same as we did. It's difficult to take something from somebody who, if they don't give up,
Well, what Dawn and I were going back and forth earlier this week to try to point out was that the difference with the Ukrainians is they know what it's like to not be free, and they know what it's like to be free, which I think steals them in a way that most of us, fortunately, can't relate to.
No.
I think you're exactly right on that.
So a lot of times we look at the good guys and we go, whatever they say is happening, but to your point, good guys lie too. But there is a report this morning, and it's something you and I texted about, we've been talking about on this show. The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States says that thermobaric rockets have been used. These are the weapons that we've been talking about that suck oxygen from the surrounding environment to create a fiery explosion and a large pressure wave. People who are hit by the blast but are far enough away to survive are left with internal injuries such as ruptured eardrums, severe concussions, internal bleeding. That says nothing of the ones who are vaporized or whose bones are crushed to death. These are not new weapons. We used them in Vietnam. And you brought up to me
Tora Bora
when we were going after
Osama. Yeah, hit him in the caves.
To get into the caves, right? Horrific weapon.
Right.
This is, correct me if I'm wrong, so this is like two you got nukes, you got atomic, and then you got this? Is that in terms
Well, you got nukes, you've got this, and then you got conventionals, because this amplifies the explosiveness of a conventional weapon, because instead of being a contained explosion that pressurizes and goes out, it creates, the atmosphere creates the explosion, and it uses the pressure wave, in a sense, as its hardest hitting weapon, not so much the fire part of it.
Does this, if this is true, if this gets confirmed, the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is saying, yeah, this happened.
Yeah.
If we get it confirmed, does this indicate to you how far he's willing to escalate and how barbaric he's willing to get, and shows that desperation?
Sure. They're also using cluster munitions, supposedly, which are banned by the United Nations, and they're using it in civilian populations. So it doesn't surprise me, none of it.
This is that catch-22. I love to hear that we use it on terrorists, right? Like, yay, we have stuff for terrorists. But I don't like to hear that we would use it on the people of Ukraine.
Right, exactly.
Hello, Robert, go ahead.
Hey, Rad.
Hey.
Hey, so I was talking to my neighbor who's from Russia, and, Putin is a man of power that likes to display his power. With the lack of support from his people and this invasion failing, what's going to stop him from nuking, Ukraine or NATO allies if Ukraine does join NATO?
This is where we started, right? This is he's a wounded animal backed into a corner.
Right.
Robert's not wrong again from all indications. I think the last number I saw was 6,000 Russians have been arrested for protesting, which is a treasonous crime in that country. So he doesn't have his people. The only scenario that stops that is if some of his oligarchs surround him and go, okay, Vlad, enough is enough. But I don't know. That's what everybody wonders. Is he so desperate? Does he have an off ramp? And if he doesn't, is that what leads him to continue down this path?
Again, it depends on the people around him. I mean, if he's losing power, and we, I was mentioning that with the longer this goes, the worse it is for him. They could, again, the people around him. There's already a couple of oligarchs who come out publicly, which I'm pretty sure they're in prison right now, but expressed that they're not for this Ukrainian push, and some of the soldiers that are being captured are saying we were forced here because they're conscripted. So
for people that are looking for a silver lining over the next many days, the longer this continues, the longer Ukraine remains not toppled, the better, in your opinion.
Right.
I saw on one of the news channels they were talking to a mom they call it a bunker, she said, but it's really just the basement of a building.
Yeah.
I mean, there's windows, there's ways that they could still be injured. And she's there with her and her kids. One's a baby and then 2 boys, and her husband's off fighting. And that's what they decided to do. And she was just, I don't know. It was surreal because she's sitting there and she's breastfeeding, and you have families there, and the husbands are off fighting. Some of the women joined as well, which that's badass. And she says, I know it's really hard to comprehend, because she knew she was talking to an American news reporter. This isn't affecting you yet, but she really believes if we don't stop it will. Like, this is inevitably going to affect you and the world. And she wasn't doing it in a, like, I told you so, or you better be scared. It was just her reality of what she's experiencing right now, and what she even knows of Putin, because she's Ukrainian and has lived there her whole life. And I'm just sitting there going, yeah, I mean, we're just sitting here. She says, hey, just last week, whenever it was, I was sitting comfortably, taking my kids to school, living how you're living right now. And she was so calm too, and they asked about food. She says, we're good today, and I think we'll be good for 2 days. After that, I don't know. And I'm just like, wow, I don't know.
That's the reality of it.
It is.
We appreciate your perspective and your experience, Eddie. We always love it when you come by, but we want to end on a happy note, a positive note. And we got some exciting things going on at NorCal Gun Vault. I wasn't even aware until you walked in this morning that this is so exciting. So what do we got?
Well, first off, can I give a birthday shout out to my granddaughter Lena? She turns 13 today.
Oh, man. 13. Well, all right.
No.
Happy birthday, now eat your f***ing cake. Happy birthday, I will punch you in the face.
Oh.
There's a happy note.
Will you be the one answering the door when she dates?
Yes. No, that's my son. That's his child. Yeah. She's in Alabama right now.
Okay.
So.
All right.
So we have recently, we're installing they call it a smokeless range, a shooting simulator. We've got it installed. We're working on some of the infrastructure of it, but by the weekend we expect to have it up and running, and it is a lot of fun. If people come by, and if I've got time, we may have people can get on there and see what they think, but it's a really exciting.
Can you choose your gun, your type of gun?
Yeah, we've got a Glock type simulated firearm. We've got an M17, 6-hour M17. We got an AR, a shotgun, and a rifle, because there's hunting, there's tactical, there's entertainment, there's shoot, don't shoot, then there's competition, like you're in an IDPA competition or something.
Is it only one person at a time?
Right now it's one person at a time, but you can do competition. You can have shooter 1, shooter 2, shooter 3, shooter 4. So you can have competition.
This is all right there in the store.
Right there in the store.
Wow.
And do you charge people to do it?
Yeah, we're working on the radius right now. We're doing some research to make sure we're not charging too little, charging too much, but
it's a fun time.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
it could be instructional as well.
Right. Well, we're going to use it in our training. So when we have the basic firearm ownership class, we can now incorporate a little bit more in-depth training to some of the training that we're doing already.
No, and you're hoping as early as this weekend people can come out and use it?
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Yes.
All right. NorCal Gun Vault and rocking online at norcalgunvault.com. Thank you so much for being here, Eddie.
Excellent.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.